everybody, thanks for joining me again today for Far From Normal's online art class. We have some really fun stuff to do today. We're going to be continuing our talk from last week about color and learning a little bit more about colors and how they mix together and how we can get different effects with them. For today's class, you are going to need a couple of worksheets. These are on my blog to print. You'll need 2 of them. You might want to use 3, so if you want to go ahead and print 3 off, that's fine, but you'll definitely need 2. You're also going to need some blank paper. You're going to need some paintbrushes. A variety of sizes is nice, but if you only have 1 or 2, that's fine too. You're going to need a pencil, and you're going to need some paints. Depending on what kind of paint you have, it doesn't really matter. Most paints will work. If you have this kind, like a washable paint, it's called a tempera paint, you can use it. You can use acrylic paint. It usually comes in tubes. There's this kind that comes in little bottles. Any kind of sort of liquidy paint, you are going to need it in black and white and 1 color. So if you have your paints, you can go ahead and get them out, and then you'll need something to mix your paint on. I usually use a plate. That works just fine as long as you wash it pretty quick when you're done. So what we're going to talk about today, the reason that we need black and white paint, is because last week you'll remember we talked about all the colors except we didn't include black and white. What we're going to talk about today is what black and white do to colors when we mix it with them. So we're going to start with white. What happens when we mix white with a color is we get what's called a tint. You would probably know tints better as a pastel. It is a lightened version of the color. So what we're going to do with our white paint and whatever color you've chosen is we're going to get out our first worksheet, and we are going to do a gradual change in color. We're going to mix our white and our color just a little bit differently each time until we get a very light tint to a really kind of darker tint. So we're going to go ahead and do that now, and I'm going to walk you through it and you can see how we're going to do that. Okay, so when we're mixing tints, we want to keep a couple of things in mind. If you remember last week, I mentioned when you're mixing colors, you want to make sure to always mix your darker color into your lighter color. So here when we're mixing things into white, I have blue, you might have red or green, whatever color you've chosen. You want to mix the blue paint into the white paint, because otherwise you end up having to use a whole lot of the lighter color to even it out. So it's just a lot easier if you remember that little trick. So I'm going to mix just a touch of the blue paint into my white, and I'm going to end up with a very, very, very light tint of blue. So this is a lot like the shading activity we did. If you guys have done my drawing classes, you'll remember when we did our shading activity and we started with the very lightest we could color, and then we went on to darker. So we're going to start out with this very light blue that I've mixed up here, and we're going to paint it over here in this first section. Go ahead and fill up your section with your nice light blue tint. So then you're going to just pick up a little bit more and mix it in and go to the next darker tint. So this is what we're going to keep doing. We're going to keep adding a little blue and then painting it on and adding more and painting it on until we get to our darkest tint over here. So now you can see how we can have just a huge variety of tints by adding white to our blue paint. And you can see the very lightest, you could probably even make it a little bit lighter by adding even less blue. And even the very darkest, if we take our blue just by itself and do a dot of it, you can see what a difference that is just by having a little bit of white added to it. So you can see the large variety of different variations you can get in your tints by adding just a little bit of white, like right here, to adding a lot of white, which you would have here. So now we've talked about what we can do with white and how we can get tints. The next thing we're going to talk about is what happens when we mix black in with our color. When we do that, we get what's called shades. Now you'll remember last week when I talked about our complementary colors, how you can mix them together and you can get a darker shade of whatever you're making. Well, when we're mixing in with black, we get what's called shades. So we're going to bring out our next worksheet and we're going to go ahead and mix some black in, and we're going to see what kind of effect that has. So let's go ahead and get started on that. So when we're doing our shades, we are going to do them basically the same way as we did our tints, except for, with this instance, our color is going to be our lighter color and the black we're mixing into it is going to be the darker one. So we're going to mix a little bit of black into our color. I'm going to be using blue again. You guys can use whatever color you want. Mix a little bit of black in and fill in this first one, and then a little bit more and a little bit more and a little bit more until all the way at the end you're going to have your very darkest shade. So there are our shades. Now you can see, once again, the big variation between just a little bit of black mixed in and a whole lot of black mixed in. So we can now see how mixing black in with our color can give us a whole other variety than mixing white in with it. What's really neat is to put them up next to each other and to see the variations just with one color and what difference it makes making black and white. These almost look like paint samples. If you've ever gone paint shopping and you get the sample with all the different variations of the color. So now we can see everything we can do with one color, mixing it with black and with white. So now we know if you mix white with a color, you get a tint. If you mix black with a color, you get a shade. Now if you mix them both together and mix gray with a color, you get what's called a tone. We're not going to do a worksheet on that one together, but you are more than welcome to print off another one and play around with that a little bit, because you can get even different variations of color by mixing them with gray. What we're going to do is we're going to do a project with this now. We're going to do what's called a monochromatic painting. Monochromatic means one color. So what we're going to do is we're going to use whatever color you want to choose, black and white, and we're going to mix variations of tints and shades and tones, and we're going to put them all together into one painting with only one color, but you'll be able to get such a variety. You'll be able to do a lot of different things within your painting. So I'm going to go ahead and do one now so you can see what I can come up with. I'm going to show you a couple other examples of ones I've done so you can get some ideas, and then you can do your own monochromatic painting. my jellyfish I just finished, you can see how I used a lot of different shades and tints of blue to do this picture, and I just made it kind of fun, did a lot of swirls and blended a lot of the colors together. I'm going to show you another example of another one I did. With this one I chose to work with green, and I just want to show you I did this tree, and you can see how I used a very, very dark shade of green to get the trunk. Then I used some of the lightest tints of green to make the little flowers down here, and then I did a whole bunch of different shades and tints in the leaves to get a lot of variety there. So you can see how with just one color and your black and your white, using your shades and tints, you can get all kinds of different effects for your pictures. So I hope you guys enjoyed learning even more about color and how colors mix. Now you can take everything that we've learned about color between last week and this week, and you can explore it all you want. You can use your colored pencils, you can use your paints, you could even play around with crayons and markers and see what kind of effects you can get by blending colors and just doing all the things that we've learned. Next week, we're going to talk a little bit about figure drawing. We're going to learn how to draw people and how to draw them moving. So that's going to be a lot of fun too. So we're going to move on to another subject and learn even more things about art. So next week you are going to need just some plain paper and a pencil, and then I'm probably going to have a worksheet or two up on the blog for you to print out. So I hope to see you all then, and I hope you enjoyed today's lesson.